Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 208. I'm about to blow your mind. I headed out to Iowa for this episode and sat down with the cast of the Woodsmith Shop show on PBS. Not only do they have a show, they also have a magazine. It's a fantastic magazine. I read it every chance I get. And it was really interesting to get their takes on some of your woodworking questions. It was a lot of fun. It was great to go out there and see their studio and just yap woodworking with them. But first, as I was walking in the studio to tell you that there's 37 spots left at Fine Woodworking Live, Tom flagged me down and told me there is now 36 spots left at Fine Woodworking Live. So to say that they're moving quickly is an understatement. If you are on the fence about coming to Fine Woodworking Live, you got a couple weeks to get off that fence at best, because they are going pretty quickly now. Head on over to finewoodworkinglive.com. Also, one last thing before we start the show, I want to let everyone know that we've got some wood turning experts coming on the show soon. And we don't get a lot of wood turning questions, and it's probably because our audience knows we're not the greatest wood turners. So consider this an official call out for your turning questions. If you are frustrated at the lathe and want to get an expert's opinion on bowl turning or vessel turning or whatever, send in the questions to shoptalk@taunton.com. If we get a lot, we might do it more frequently. It's up to you. It's up to the questions that we get. Again, send in those turning questions and all of your woodworking questions to shoptalk@taunton.com. All right, enough of that. On with the show. So I am here in the Woodsmith Shop.
Welcome.
Television studio. This is my first time on a TV set. If you can't tell, they don't really allow me on TV sets very often. Phil, Logan, Chris, the hosts, the stars.
The
Cast.
talent.
Talent. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Industry term.
Star power right here.
Yeah.
That's always an awkward term when somebody refers to you as the talent.
Yeah.
Especially knowing what you know.
Exactly. Or what I don't know.
Have you met us?
Well, Phil, you emailed me a couple weeks ago, and you're like, "Hey, let's do something together." And
Right.
it's a great idea because we work for different companies, but what did
Yeah.
you say?
Well, my idea is just, we're sort of competitors. We kind of play in the same sandbox,
Wait a minute.
but we're not really competitors either, because we're both trying to advance the craft and to be honest, you guys reach a different audience than we reach. Sure, there's overlap on it,
Yeah.
but I feel like we had the opportunity to talk about, a shared interest in woodworking, and why not?
Well, and I'm out here because in all honesty, I got started woodworking watching the Woodsmith show.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
I was sitting around on a Saturday in Nashville, flicking through the channels, and it came on, and immediately I was brought back to, oh, this is like New Yankee Workshop. I used to watch this with my dad, and it was woodworking TV, and I started watching it, and then every Saturday I'd watch it, and it was really organic how it happened. I think we had just bought our house.
Sure.
So that's how everybody gets into woodworking.
Yeah.
And that led me to Mark Spagnolo, and that led me to Fine Woodworking, and here I am ruining Fine Woodworking.
Well, and let's be fair. There is one stark difference between the Woodsmith Shop and New Yankee Workshop. We don't have a radial arm saw,
Right.
which
And
Not yet.
not yet.
We have room for one.
Yeah.
sticky back sandpaper.
True.
Right.
I'm still looking for the massive supply of sticky back sandpaper. It's got to be in a closet dedicated.
There's cupboard.
There's a couple. Yeah. We have it. Rolls and rolls of it. It's like on
actually-
Subscribe and Save.
Yeah.
I went out and I bought rolls and rolls and rolls of each grit of sticky back sandpaper because of you. And
You're welcome.
and they last a long time.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
I've had the same rolls for 5 years probably.
Exactly.
So
But they work great.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because I used to get the cheapo sheets at the hardware store or whatever because I'm cheap, I guess. But once I started here and then we used it on everything, I'm like, but it's so expensive. And then you start using it and it's like, oh, I'm never using the other stuff again.
Yeah. It's great. So you guys just finished up season 13 airing, right?
Sure.
Yep.
We don't get it in Connecticut.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. And that's one of the troubles that we deal with when we answer questions from viewers is like every public television station sets their own schedule.
Yeah.
So, In Iowa, we're on like Tuesday nights at 6:30, Saturday afternoons at 1 or 1:30 or something like that. And then somebody will, be like, I just watched the December 4th show and I had a question about whatever. And it's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like, what market are you in? What show was it? What were we building? And who was on the show?
Then
we can narrow it down to what.
Because people can,
your question is.
Public television stations have access to the past 3 seasons.
Okay, so they might be airing season 11 right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that could get really hairy.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that's the sucker part for us when we launch a season, which, we put it up and it starts airing in Iowa because they're our producing or home station in September. And then that's when it starts to go out that all the other stations can grab it. But who knows when they'll do it. So Iowa just finished their 13 episode run just a few weeks ago. But a lot of stations will start at the new year or something. So, we want to have like this big launch party, so to speak, for when the season drops, but it's like it starts in 8 different places,
When do you guys start preparing for season 14? Am I late to the party on that one? Is it already happening or what?
We actually have our script meeting for the first 2 episodes tomorrow afternoon.
Wow.
We'll start shooting next week. So
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we should be able to pound that out, I would think. I say this, beforehand, but 3 months.
Yeah,
usually.
depends on
how our schedule works.
You're on record now.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Well, but nobody will ever know.
3 months from whenever you hear this podcast.
Exactly.
Which is much like the TV show. I get questions about
Right.
episode 54.
Yeah.
Yep. You're like,
Yep.
2 years before I worked here.
54.
Exactly.
That's Ed Pernix. I'm going to send you his email address.
Yeah. Well, should we answer some questions? Like, I thought, let's do an honest to God podcast the way that we do it. And
Yeah.
part of what we do is we try and sit down with experts and throw questions at them.
Sure.
And one awesome thing about this is I can now use the questions that Mike and Tom and myself have answered 3 times already and get the Iowa take.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we get the Woodsmith shop take. So let's see. Question number 1 is from Andrew. I'm preparing to make a dining table for my family. We have little kids, so it's going to get a lot of heavy use. I want something that is beautiful yet durable. In the past, I've used shellac and varnish over walnut, but I don't think that is durable enough here. I'm leaning towards something like white oak, but I don't know what kind of finish to use. Embrace the patina with something like oil, maybe beeswax. I've even heard of a soap finish. What can I use that will age well, be beautiful, and not need constant stripping and repairing?
The miracle finish.
Well, we've got 2 aspects. We've got the finish and we've got the wood. Since I don't know what kind of kids he's got that he's worried about walnut.
Yeah. I have 2 young kids. I use a lot of walnut. That's what I use for when I'm building furniture for my house. And they're not, my wife's harder on the walnut hitting it with the vacuum cleaner than the kids are,
Yeah.
So that would be some soft walnut.
Yeah. I wouldn't worry about walnut.
No.
No, I think part of the question, there's a finish aspect to it, I think, on choosing a finish that's going to, because kids can be kind of meat grinders on stuff.
They can. Sure.
But I think there's also a design element, too, that you want to choose a design that's going to wear well. Because if you're going to choose a high-style dining room table, when that starts to show wear, it's going to look rattier than something that has maybe a little bit more of a, like a farmhouse table or a country table or something like that. So I guess it depends on what he's trying to get for something that looks nice. Because you can have a nice-looking furniture piece, but as it accumulates its family wear and tear.
Sure.
Well, in that regard, we just did a series with John Coffey on French polishing, and he's in Long Island, and he says that he has clients that he has like set schedule once a year, once every 6 months. He goes through and touches up their French polish surface.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. Don't French polish your dining room table when you have kids.
I agree.
Unless you're French polishing with polyurethane.
Exactly.
There you go.
Well, and see, so
Can it be done?
yeah.
Not very well.
So, and this is interesting to me because I'm getting ready to start. I have young kids, so I've kind of kept my kitchen table for the last couple of years and dealt with it, and it's beat to crap, just because the kids have left, like glow sticks on the table have leaked and stripped the finish off.
A leaky glow stick. That's new.
Yeah, I think a dog got a hold of it, and then they set it onto the table, and it stripped
here
the
you are
finish.
blaming the kids.
Exactly.
It was a team effort. Really.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm getting ready to start building what's going to be my dining room table for good now. So this is an interesting question to me, and we use spray lacquer here. We use a pre-catalyzed spray lacquer, and it's super
You guys
durable.
have a spray booth.
We have a
do.
spray
We
booth,
do.
which is
not
nice.
to brag, not
but-
to make you feel bad.
Yeah.
but yes.
Humble brag.
Yeah,
Put 4 dining room tables in
you
there.
could, but because I have access to it, that's what I'm going to use on mine.
Sure,
Yeah.
But I'm also under the mentality of the wear and tear that table's going to get is saturating that table with history.
Sure.
Let the story show. That's my philosophy. I mean, yeah, you want it to look good, but let the history show. Kids are going to grow up around that dining room table.
Sure. I
Let
think
it show
everyday
the
furniture,
history.
you just have to assume that's
Yeah.
going to be the case, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some design things you want to do because my wedding gift for my wife was making a dining room table. So I did a 6-foot drop leaf shaker style table from New Yankee Workshop. And I thought it would be a really cool thing because you can drop the leaves, push it up against the side, and whatever. Well, we've never dropped the leaves really on it. It's always been fully out there. The problem is that there's this big long, you got 2 6-foot rule joints on there that constantly catch things. And when you have little kids, like milk gets spilled, so now it goes right down that crack and right onto people's laps. So I've kind of taken some flack for that. But the other thing is I did mine on a cherry, and I initially did just Danish oil, like 6 coats of Danish oil, but then it starts to dry out. And then I did a polyurethane over the top of that, and that's held up pretty well. But like when my son was teething, he would like chew on the edge of the table. So on the edge, there's like this, it looks like a beaver started gnawing at the edge of the table.
That is definitely part of the story now.
Yeah, and I'm never going to sand those
No,
out,
you can't.
Or when my daughter was starting to write, when you first start writing, like you are leaning on that pencil or pen, so you can see all these little
Outlines.
outlines of letters and stuff on there.
I
And it's
guarantee when his son goes to school, you're going to sit there, goes away to college or something. You're going to sit there rubbing the tea
Exactly.
on the table, crying.
And that's what I mean. I mean, that's part of the history.
Yeah. Sure.
There is, like we said, there is, a polyurethane's a great finish to put on. It's a high wear finish. It's durable. You can give yourself the best chance, but don't cry over spilled milk.
Yeah.
right.
So are you going pre-cat?
No, I think polyurethane is the best choice for an all-around broad spectrum approach to a table. Withstands water, heat, alcohol, all that sort of thing. But I'd probably want to cut it 50% on my first coat. Let it saturate thoroughly, particularly with that white oak the gentleman's mentioning. And then build up a good series of coats on top of that. But another thing to consider, a little harder would be one of the oil varnish mixtures. That would be the Danish oil, that'd be General Finish Seal Cell, something like that. Because with the oil, you get a little harder finish. Polyurethanes can be a touch soft. And you have the option of building up to a level that you want, and it's not hard to reapply a coat.
Yeah. You're going pre-cat.
I'm going pre-cat.
Because you can.
Because I can, yes.
Now, for us mere mortals,
for the mere
without
mortals,
like a 100-foot of spray booth.
So we've done some work recently with Old Masters, and they have their Master's Armor. It is a water-based polyurethane, I believe. It applies really thick, but it self-levels. So if I was in my shop at home and I did not have the spray equipment that I have access to here in our studios, I would do that because I feel like I would get a really nice thick finish. And they also have a
But not like a dipped finish.
not a
It's
dipped
just-
finish. No. But
Would you dye beforehand or something on walnut?
on walnut, I would probably hit it with. I've been using. So I built a sleigh bed for my wife and myself, and I used the General Finishes Seal Cell.
Okay.
It's an oil finish, but it really pops the color. It gives it a little bit more depth, a little bit more chatoyance, if you will.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I know, right?
You get
I'm
10
fancy.
points
I
there.
think you
That's
need
a
to put $3
Scrabble
on
word.
the table.
Exactly. But no, it gives it a little bit nicer look. So I would hit it with the oil first, let that dry thoroughly, and then I would hit something like the Old Masters.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right.
Yeah. But I like the lacquer thing from a repair standpoint because lacquer always burned back into itself.
Okay, so a pre-catalyzed lacquer is repairable.
It is. And I've done some drop repairs. I wouldn't say it's as repairable as a pre-cat lacquer, but it is. I've done some repairs on stuff that seems to work really nicely.
Okay. What about you, Phil?
I think I would do, like I have the polyurethane. I really like that because it does wear. The thing to think about if you're, and I had done the Danish oil initially thinking that, as it wears or whatever, I can easily repair it. Yeah, you can, but now your table's out of commission for a few days while you go through this. And so how often do you want to have that table out of play for family life, and we had it was like our daily meal table. So what are you going to do instead? Put up a bunch of card tables or, we're eating around the TV or something like that, So I liked having the polyurethane because if I do need to, it's going to be once every 20 years instead of once every 2 or 3.
Yeah. Right on. Any thoughts on, right off the bat, table soap finish, not a good idea.
No.
I shot a video with, so I think of everyone by their Instagram handle.
Sure.
So let's drop the Instagram name.
Sidecar Furniture. I'm sorry, Dave. I totally flicked on that one. But, and he did a Danish Stool in ash, and he did a soap finish. It's very fitting for a Danish stool. Sure. And he even said, he's like, this is barely a finish. This can barely be considered a finish. Yeah. So soap's no go.
No, I like the traditional aspect of it and kind of the story behind it. But no.
But you're reapplying every year.
Yeah. Easily. At that point, I'd rather just apply a beeswax finish.
Yeah, and that's essentially.
I've never done a beeswax finish.
Yeah.
Have you?
I have beehives, so I've played around with beeswax quite a lot.
And we go a little deeper down the rabbit hole.
Exactly. Right. I've done more beeswax finishes on turning where it's really easy to apply, especially with heat and friction.
Yeah.
But I would rather do that than a soap finish personally, just because I know I get a little water resistance with it.
Okay.
So
there you go.
Yeah.
But if you were out of beeswax and out of pre-catalyzed lacquer and out of other things, maybe soap.
Maybe soap.
All right. So I would shy away from shellac, right?
Yeah.
Hot coffee cup on a shellac.
Exactly.
More character than you want.
But you're going to have, spilled ketchup or salad dressing or something like that where you're going to have some of those other chemicals in there are going to eat through some of those, shellac.
You wipe up the ketchup after you spill it, right, Phil?
Yeah, you do. But it doesn't
lick it up.
You lick it up. Yeah.
Yeah, but then it goes in that crack. Remember?
Right. Exactly. Crack peels up everywhere.
Ketchup in the crack. There's your title.
That's a pro tip for everybody. No drop leaf tables.
Yeah, there's a drip pan under each of those at his house.
Drop cloth, just hanging from the bottom. All right, let's look at question number 2, which is from Matt. I just finished my first real project that I designed primarily to practice joinery. I have very few hours in the shop under my belt, and most of that time has been invested in learning sharpening. Dang, this guy's good.
Yeah, starting where you should.
Yeah. Could you recommend a relatively small project that would force me to learn a few new techniques, but not totally overwhelm me? I have some experience with dovetails and mortise and tenons. I own a table saw drill press, bandsaw, 6-inch joiner, and a 12-inch planer, and I'm starting to build my hand tool collection. So, Matt, you are a Gold Star student for learning sharpening first, right?
Yes.
Especially since when you're learning sharpening, we'd all agree that it's a foundational skill, but it's when you're done sharpening, there's nothing to show.
Yeah.
Other than a sharp tool.
And all of us have told people countless times you should learn sharpening first, and probably none of us learn sharpening first.
Yeah, no, I would disagree with Phil. You have a shaved forearm usually to show once you're done. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Too much of the razor burn.
Exactly.
Forearm razor burn is a thing that woodworkers only know.
Yeah. But I would be cookie cutter and say,
can you get a little closer than that?
Sure. I would be cookie cutter and I know, right? Sorry. Well, usually it's attached to my shirt. Jeez. I would
Can we get a boom?
Yeah. I would, I'm gonna give you the cookie cutter answer and say, boxes are a great small project. You know, you concentrate on those small fundamental pieces. They don't take long to build. You have something to show for it fairly quickly, and you can practice. There's a million different styles of boxes you can build. You know, you can build a little frame and panel box, mortise and tenon, obviously dovetail box, finger joints, you know, whatever you want.
Would you tell someone just starting off to maybe stay away from miters? Like a 4-sided miter box is much more difficult than you would think.
It's more difficult than most people realize, because hitting a 45-degree miter perfectly is hard. Yeah. It's good practice, though.
Yeah, good point.
I would stay away from it. I don't do it because
It would drive you back to sharpening.
It would drive you back to sharpening. Yeah.
If there's anything that could do it.
But you know, if you get to a point where you're all boxed out, small side tables. Make something practical, you know. Side tables are great.
Side table with a drawer.
With a drawer, exactly. Yes. And then you got your box and your table. So, you know, there's an evolution there. So that's where I would start.
Is side table with a drawer, is that your answer, Chris?
No, it's a good one, but I'm going to say a small wall cabinet with a drawer and a door. See, I'm going to one-up you.
Okay,
a drawer and a door.
Yeah.
And maybe if you were to choose like an arts and crafts style, you could have some through joinery. Lots of possibilities. Or keep it really simple.
That's what Pekovich would say. I know that.
Okay, we get the whole Kimiko. There too.
I would go with the side table. I think that's a good idea, because I have a few side tables in the house that are in like a round stickly style. It doesn't have a drawer on it, but you get the gluing up a panel, you know, cutting it round if you want to go that way. And then I think there's at least my own woodworking journey where it's like I try a specific joinery technique and it's like, okay, I did it. Now I'm going to move on to the next one. And I think there's a second and a third project using that same joinery where you start to really understand it. You know, that you can do a mortise and tenon reliably, where it's like, man, I hope these turn out.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's another aspect there. Doing something that is utilitarian in the house, like a side table or a wall cabinet. You know, I don't know if Matt has a significant other in the house, but it's something to show. Like, hey, I'm not just messing around in my shop.
I'm not just spending a whole lot of money on this stuff.
And I'm not just in there sharpening my tools. I'm actually building something that's functional in the house. So,
I always, when I started off, I was building things that we needed.
Yes.
And one problem with that was there was a lot of pressure. To get it done in a timely manner. And then you start making finishing mistakes. You start, you know, all sorts of things start piling up. I really like how he's asking, what's a good skill building project?
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
I think, I mean, his mind is totally in the right.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Listen, he started sharpening first.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is the kind of guy he is.
Yeah.
So when you build something for your house, do you find yourself rushing, or do you find yourself, because there's a different mentality when you're building?
Well, of course there is. It's like doing, you know, it's like there's the time and the effort you would put into something you were truly doing for yourself, and then there's like being at work, okay? And it's kind of like being at work.
Yeah.
The pressure's there, and the job needs to get done. There's a timetable.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
so it's 98% of what I would like it to be, but not quite there.
Yeah. You know, the only thing I ever felt pressured for my house was my kid's crib. You know, because obviously,
God.
I know.
Why did you do that to yourself?
Well, here's the thing, though.
Seriously,
I know
man.
my wife wanted to co-sleep with our first one.
Okay.
So I had like a 3-month buffer. It was great, and it got done in perfect amount of time.
Not doing anything during that 3 months.
I
Let's
know,
go.
I know.
Like sleeping.
So, yeah. But as far as other stuff goes, I agree. It's not always exactly what you want it to be, for better or for worse. But for example, I'm sitting here looking at a pile of boards over there that's going to become side tables for my bedroom. Yeah. And it's like I had them glued up before Thanksgiving, I think, and I cut them apart, and it's just kind of sitting there now because I'm not really in a hurry for it.
You're acclimating.
It's acclimating. I want to make sure it goes through the full year's worth of seasons for all the expansion and contraction. But I guess my wife does a good job of not making me feel pressured when I'm building something. So,
All right. Well, let's talk about our all-time favorite techniques of all time for this week. Who wants to go first? Logan?
Nope.
Calling you out.
Okay. All time.
Nobody's. Sorry, I'm running.
No, that's fine. So we're talking about joinery technique. We're talking about finishing technique.
No, so it's just something that you were doing in the shop, and you're like, man, this is cool.
Spraying paint. So not spray paint. Okay. Spraying paint. So I just was, we were talking about some of the stuff we built on the TV show while we were walking around doing a tour. And one of those things I ended up with is a hardware cart we did. It's actually this hardware cart that's behind us. I ended up with extra parts for it. And I'm in the process of kind of organizing my shop. And I was like, what am I going to do? I don't really want to spray lacquer on it, but I wanted to make it look nice. I mean, I like my stuff in my shop to look good. Yeah. And one of those things that Chris has done over in the past is hammered paint on a lot of these shop built tools and stuff. So I ended up with a can of the hammered paint finish, and just the ease of spraying paint and spraying that finish. It's like, why do I not do this more often? Yeah. I think as woodworkers, we enjoy the beauty of wood, right? I mean, we like.
God forbid you cover it up with a coat of paint.
I know, but when it's nasty, not nasty, but it's still nice Baltic birch plywood. But it's still plywood, So slapping a coat of black hammered paint on it, it just looks like an awesome industrial cart now, which it's going to be cool, I think, once I get in the shop. But yeah, I think, spraying finish is something I just really enjoy.
I just built a storage cabinet for my shop. And as I was building it, it's like I put the carcass together and I was like, all right, I'm going to take it all apart and spray it afterwards. And I started making drawers. All right.
Yeah, exactly.
I put things in the drawers.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm never taking this apart and spraying.
Well, I know. And that's why it's like, it's so easy. I mean, in a day and a half, including drying time, had coat of paint on everything, perfect. So call it a technique or not, but spraying the paint is phenomenal.
Well, I think there's a definite art to applying paint to a furniture project compared to just doing walls in your house or something like that.
Yeah.
And, you can always, at least on the ones that I've painted, if you brush it, then there's issues where you have non-aligned surfaces, or if you roll it out when you get to the edges or inside corners, then you have brush marks and being able to spray the paint on there is a skill so that it's not just all running down on the inside
and spraying paint, spraying a latex or spraying an oil-based paint is something that most people can do at home because you can buy a HVLP sprayer fairly inexpensively, like the Wagner style or whatever, and they work pretty well. So it's a pretty accessible thing to do as well. It's not, you don't need a big Fiji spray system to spray a decent coat of paint.
Fuji.
Where are you spraying your
I'm really
paint?
thirsty
You're
right
in the
now.
Pacific Islands right now.
I'd like some Fiji water, please.
Wow.
Phil, what's your favorite technique for this week?
Mine was, I just did a cooler cart for a friend of mine as a Christmas project, and it was all white oak and wanted to keep the parts joined together pretty well. So I had put together a jig for doing loose tenons. Mm-hmm. But normally when we've done loose tenons, it's kind of like with a edge guide on your router, and you just kind of, every tenon is a different size, so to speak. And this one I had made a template used with a guide bushing, and then and this was something that Chris had showed me using an end mill bit, a metal cutting end mill bit that was 8 millimeters. So I did that so I had a specific size jig, cutting specific size tenons for all the joinery in the whole project. So it was kind of like a DIY domino thing. So
why
then I could
an end mill bit as opposed to just a router bit?
It was the sharpest one in the shop.
What's the difference?
Okay, well, the end mills that we used here, okay, most router bits are going to be 2 flutes, which is a fairly aggressive cut, good for most applications. But in metalworking, you have end mills, which you can purchase in 2, 3, or 4 flutes. So having an additional flute can give you a somewhat smoother cut. And you also have the option of going with a roughing bit, which has a serrated edge. The serrated edges help with stringy woods like white oak, and sometimes things like fir, things that can be a little bit rough to cut. And so they feed a little bit differently, but for certain applications, they work very, very well.
Yeah. So you use a roughing bit and then follow it up with a smoothing bit? Or?
No, a roughing bit is fine. What it will leave is slight serrations on the inside of your mortise, but that's a non-issue for a glue-up.
You don't take pictures of your mortise and show them to everyone?
Well,
It's more glue surface.
Right.
well, after this, I guess I will.
Stay tuned. No, so I have a 4-flute 5/16 bit, which I was looking at because I had part of the idea was like looking at the Festool domino, which I'm just not in a position to get right now. But I like that concept, kind of like biscuit joinery, where you have like a pre-made tenon. So all you are concentrating on is just one technique. It's just mortising. So I had designed this jig to match the Festool's 8mm domino. So 5/16 and 8mm are pretty much a dead equivalence. So I have the 5/16 end mill bit, and then I had a number of dominoes, but then I had milled up a bunch of ash for those domino sizes to begin with. So I had just like a bucket of them, and it was just really nice to be able to just concentrate on that and not have to go through a second tenoning step to be able to put this whole project together.
You're not limited to the widths of a domino.
Right. No, I could definitely make another template that would be a bigger size or whatever. So I could just use a plunge router, this bit, guide bushing, and then know that all of the mortises are going to be consistent from piece to piece. So it's simplified assembly for me. I mean, it can sometimes get tedious, especially when you're doing some frame and panel or this cart. It just felt like, well, when you do loose tenon, it's instead of just being one mortise, it's 2 mortises for every joint. So you've kind of doubled the work, but simplified the process, I guess. So
right on. So loose tenon joinery.
Loose tenon joinery
with guide bushings and
Yeah.
little jig. Chris, you're struggling over there.
I am struggling, Ben. This is difficult for me. No, actually, I'm mostly a wood carver at home, so I'm not really running into some of these different items.
Really?
Yes.
What kind of carving do you do at home?
I like to do folk art carving.
Oh, okay.
Did you see the fish above his bench when we were in there? He did we'll show you that.
Okay, yeah. We'll have to get a picture of that.
No, so that's what I enjoy, and I guess I enjoy it because with wood carving, you have to constantly be engaged with what you're doing. With running wood through a table saw at some point, I mean, obviously for safety reasons, you don't put your mind to sleep, but it's a very repetitive act and it's somewhat formulaic. Mm-hmm. Both carving, you always got to be thinking because it's not only about the tool engaging the wood, it's about the overall form. Mm-hmm. And that makes it fun. That makes it challenging. That makes it interesting.
Right on.
He has some really sweet whirly gigs.
Cool.
For like your yard that is as the blade spins, the fish swims that he's carved. They're pretty cool.
Kinetic sculpture.
Yes, kinetic sculpture.
Do you have one thing about carving that is great for especially at home activity is it could be done in the house.
Yes.
So are you like set up off the kitchen or something?
I'm fortunate enough to have a nice room in the basement. And so I don't have a whole lot of power tools. I have a bandsaw and a drill press, and that's enough, and my workbench. And to me, it's cathartic because it's quiet. I listen to an audiobook and work away on my fish, my dragonflies, my chickens, whatever I'm doing.
Right on. All right. Well, mine is kind of silly.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm making a ukulele, and one of the parts I'm making right now, the little tailpiece, is I'm using Rich Light for all the ebony aspects that you would fingerboard. And so this Rich Light, jet black, and very difficult to transfer joinery marks onto accurately. So I just take a knife line, there's your joinery marks, and then I just have a little piece of pink chalk on my workbench and just drop the chalk in there. And your lines show up on the black Rich Light like as clear as day. So, and it would work with walnut or whatever. Probably getting the pores a little bit more.
Sure.
But just using chalk to mark out joinery a little bit more clearly.
Yeah, and Places really sell sewing supplies. You can get white pencils. They're awful handy.
Yeah, you know what? They're very soft.
Are they a little too soft?
And
Okay.
I'm going through a couple. I have two different ones that I leave on my bench right now. And it's like you get them sharpened to a fine point for joinery.
So you got about a ½ inch and then they're gone?
And well, it's like you get one line
Okay.
and you got to resharpen it.
Right.
So I'm experimenting with different white pencils right now. Yeah.
I like the chalk idea though, and like you said, you could do it on walnut. It would get in the pores, but a soft brass brush scrapes that out of the pores super fast.
Yeah.
But it's interesting dropping the chalk into a knife line. I've never thought about that.
I must have seen it somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm around woodworking a lot these days, so I can never claim responsibility for any technique I use. But it was just a real quick. Oh, wait a minute, there we go. So cool. Yeah,
very good idea.
I can see that with like some of the oaks too, where you have just so many straight lines.
Yeah,
and then you put
the pores
lose the graphite.
Yeah.
Like, is this a grain line or is this my layout line?
I think
Take
that's
a chance. Take a chance.
Yeah.
That's where
Usually grain line.
The infatuation with blue tape has come from around our parts.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break and then we'll answer a couple more questions. All of you, our listeners, have different skill levels, woodworking interests, design aesthetics, makers you admire, workshops, tools, and projects unique to you. The aspects that join this community together are a shared love of the craft, the smell of the workshop, the challenge of perfection, and the chance to create something beautiful. That's why we introduced Fine Woodworking Unlimited, our new membership that gives you access to over 43 years of our content designed to help teach, inspire, and connect with you. Unlimited members have access to everything fine woodworking, including our complete online archive, over 55 video workshops, and our iconic magazine delivered right to your door. No matter where you are on your journey today, Unlimited has something to inspire your next step. To learn more, go to finewoodworking.com/unlimited. All right, question number 3. Off air, we're talking about catfishing carp, which is a YouTube channel. All right. It's getting real up in here. All right, question number 3 is from Christian. I think this is going to be quick.
Okay.
I have a question about bandsaws. Do you ever detension your bandsaws? Honestly, what's the reason? Do I really need to detension my bandsaw?
Well,
all right, just wait, we're going to go right down the line. Yes or no? Do you detention your bandsaw?
Wait, should I or do I? Should I or do I?
you?
If I were a better man, I would. That's your answer.
Logan.
No.
No. It's like one of those, I file that under great advice I never follow.
Yeah.
I can reel off the reasons why you should.
All right, 1, 2, 3, go.
First off, the increased tension will deform your bandsaw tires. 2, the stress on the bandsaw blade will eventually crack the steel in the gullets, reducing the life of the bandsaw blade. 3rd, it's stressing the metal parts, and a lot of failure in steel comes from constant stress, which causes the steel to crystallize, and that's how you're going to get your bearing failures. That's it.
Beautiful.
Done.
Wow.
Damn, drop that mic.
Yep.
My bandsaw tension lever is broke on mine,
Yeah. Nice.
so I don't.
As I said, I should and I don't.
So our ancestors crossed the prairie and covered wagons, and it's too hard to go.
No, think about it. That's my reason. That is the most difficult, awkward, arthritis-inflaming little hand. I hate it.
Wow,
That's my reason.
I think Christian. I think he hit a nerve with Chris.
You know, it took that many questions to get to something which really hit me.
Yeah.
Wow. I've always heard if you use your bandsaw frequently, it's not that big of a deal. So if you're if I'm putting it in storage, I'll detention it.
Sure.
But I use my bandsaw every day, just about. So,
And that takes care of the tire deformation issue.
but I'm screwed with the other ones.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay,
Your
all right.
metal's gonna crystallize.
Yeah.
We have a bandsaw blade manufacturer right down the road. It's a cast iron. All right. I'm gonna sleep at night.
Yeah. No, I don't.
You
I
do
have a Craftsman 12-inch aluminum frame bandsaw.
Yeah.
And I don't detention it. I think part of it is that I think I would just be too forgetful to come back into the shop because I don't always.
I've seen people put a thing over the power switch.
Twitch.
Yeah,
Right. Or something on the
get
table.
reader tips, probably 3 or 4 of them every couple months. Here's my bandsaw tensioning reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Little
I'm like,
stop
well,
sign. Or
here's
whatever.
mine. don't detention it.
Yeah.
Now, have you ever turned it on with a detention?
No.
Because it is hair raising.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's
Right.
very.
That blade spins off the tires
Yeah.
really quick. Yeah.
When I first got my bandsaw, I did detention all the time, and that might be why I stopped. Because I know myself well. All right. Question number 4 is from Pete. What is the best way to center stock on a router table? Recently, I've been making cabinet doors, and I have been using a router table to make the grooves and the stiles and rails. I've been taking scrap stock milled to the same dimension as my workpieces, marking the center line, eyeballing the stock to the center of the bit. Then I make test cuts to find the true center before I route the final pieces. This is tedious and time-consuming. Do you have any suggestions to speed up the process without losing accuracy?
Don't worry about the size of the width of your groove. And that way, get close and run it through on both sides, and then worry about accuracy when you go to.
So flip so you have
Right.
centered.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess the only thing is that making sure where you have that off. If it's off center, when you flip it, you could end up being in a back routing situation where that piece is going to go shooting out of your hand.
And now let's say he's using like a bit set, like a coved cope and stick bit set or something like that, and he really does want to get it centered.
Oh, well. Trial and error, no way out of it.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of setup blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a 1/4 inch offset or 1/4 inch to center, you do on 3/4 sock, 1/4 inch setup block.
Yeah.
That's my go-to.
Or you can use like a marking gauge on the end of one of your pieces or a test piece where you could mark from both faces so that you end up with a 1/4 inch in between.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could use that as a gauge to set your bit. And that would get you a lot closer to the ballpark for getting your bit set up perfectly centered if that's what you were trying to do.
But
to eliminate some of the
real world, you don't ever center anything. I'm a big fan of reference faces.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sure.
let's say I've got a 1/4 inch tenon and I need that groove to be a 1/4 of an inch. And so I want it to be in this, whatever. If you always just mark a reference face on all of your stock and run it once, you don't have to flip it. If it's not in the center, it's all going to line up.
right.
But what if you're the type of person that begins woodworking by sharpening? Wouldn't that bother you?
Oh, poor.
We admire him.
Yes.
Yeah. You're secretly our hero, but
Poor Matt. Jeez.
no, I mean, there's some people that really want that. I guess if you're making, if you're using that groove and then cutting a stub tenon with a table saw, it's easier if it's centered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because otherwise your opposite cheek has to be a different blade height on it. But most of the time I'm getting it as close as I can. And then for a lot of times with grooves on the router table, I actually use a slot cutter rather than a straight bit. Because the slot cutter has a more efficient cutting action than a straight bit does.
Yeah, but they scare the crap out of me.
Yeah, they can a little bit, but I find that they cut so smooth.
Do they really?
Because to me, like a straight bit, especially if you get like a 1/4 inch one, I mean, you can really hear your router motor just kind of screech at that.
Yeah.
But a slot cutter, because it's coming around at a different cutting
It has
angle,
momentum.
it has momentum on it. So I find that the feed in and out of it is a lot smoother than it is with a straight bit.
I've never used a slot cutter, and now I'm going to rethink that. That's interesting. Huh.
Then if he really wants to go centered on it and it needs to be 1/4 inch, you do like a 3/16 slot cutter, and then you can flip your piece around and then be able to get a 1/4
And
inch
you're not
slot
into-
and it'd be perfectly centered.
And then you're not into a back routing
Right.
issue.
Huh.
And that was something on that cooler cart too, was I ended up using a slot cutter for a lot of the grooves and pieces just all the grooves that I needed to do on it. And it felt a lot smoother. Sometimes like when you get in the middle of a piece and you're routing it with a straight bit, the whole groove before that is all jammed up with shavings and whatever and behind it. So
Yeah.
you can really hear it kind of taxing and chattering in there. And
That was one thing I was going to say is my biggest complaint with the router table is they're dusty.
Yeah.
And a slot cutter has much more efficient dust collection because the bit's buried in the fence where the dust collection port is.
Right.
Where a straight bit, you're trying to pull that dust down
or
into
blow
the
it out
motor,
the end, or
and it
something like that.
doesn't
well.
collect from down there.
You guys blew my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Had to come
Well,
all
and
the
the
way
other
to
thing,
Iowa.
like a straight bit, I mean, you're never going to be able to route more than like a quarter or 5/16 inch deep cut per pass without
can
it
with a
really.
slot cutter.
With a slot cutter, it's 1/2 inch deep.
Yeah.
You can go 1/2 inch deep
Because
instantly.
you're basically at a ripping action
Right.
with a slot cutter. It's like a rip blade.
Now, if you're trying to center the bit and you're needing to move things precisely at home, I don't have a lift or anything, so I've got that like hope for the best, and think happy thoughts while you tighten it back down.
which is a good argument for the reference faces.
Well, what I was going to say, if you have a lift, it would be far easier to dial in a slot cutter.
Oh yeah,
Than far easier to dial in a slot cutter precisely than moving the fence.
yes,
Exactly.
Which is always hit or miss. I mean, it's
Yeah.
always
Too
hit or
far,
miss.
not
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, you're sitting there with the mount tapping.
Exactly.
Well, the first 3 passes are like these really gentle passes, gentle taps, and it's moving it fractionally, and it's still not enough. So by the 4th one, you're just like, nope, too far.
Yeah.
All right. So do all 3 of you use slot cutters? Is that a Woodsmith thing?
I think that's a Phil thing, but I will now.
Yeah, me too.
That learned something.
Are they expensive?
No, they're not.
terribly.
What I like about them is I think the one that I have is a Freud, where you essentially just buy the arbor,
Okay.
and then whatever size cutter you need, you just start adding on. So
It's like a dado blade.
it's almost like a dado blade, but so you're not buying multiple arbors. You just buy a new wing that threads on there. And then some of them are designed that you can stack them and come with shims. So it's like it's a little tiny
Getting
stacked
into
dado.
shaper territory.
So
there,
but then you can dial in for a precise plywood or some wackadoodle fractional measurement that you need. But because right now I just have like a 1/4 inch one and an 1/8 inch one.
Yeah.
And that they just work so well.
Well, and personally, I prefer to do grooves like that on the table saw.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I'm
Yeah, and that gets to me too, because I prefer to do joinery on a router table and not on a table saw.
and I'm opposite.
Well, duke it out.
It's not a contest, Ben.
It's not.
Okay. All right.
Trust me.
Yeah, this is not a competition because I've already won.
Seniority.
So what do you guys have coming up? It came out yesterday. I listened to it this morning. You're doing a podcast for all of our podcast listeners.
Sure. Yeah, we're calling it the Shop Notes Podcast. The 3 of us have a warm spot in our heart for the long departed Shop Notes magazine. So we wanted to be able to continue that name a little bit. And that's kind of talks about what we want the content of the podcast to be, is like what we're doing in our shop. We usually have a segment in there of what's going on our workbench currently and on our home, in our home shops, or, there is a luxury at working at a woodworking magazine where lunchtime you can duck into the shop and you got like a little lunchtime project that you have going on. And Logan and I usually have that happen, and John does too, to a certain extent. So the 3 of us are on the podcast. So it's more about that. And then we usually try and tackle one topic either submitted from listeners or through social media or whatever, where we can kind of talk about sharpening routines, or which end up being really subjective and personal as much as people want to make them objective.
Especially this sharpening routines. There's no one answer.
No.
Right.
It's what works for you.
Yeah, it's whatever you're comfortable with.
But,
Right.
But
And
people
it
want
ends
to
up-
hear what works for you.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, whether it's watching woodworking videos on YouTube or like your magazine. I know a lot of times when I'm flipping through it, it's like the first pass of the magazine, you're looking at what they're doing related to the technique or the project. The second pass of the magazine, you're like, oh crap, that's how he puts his dado blade on the wall. I could totally do that. Or I love the way he's got his, you start looking at the background stuff. So there's
that's the best part of my job is like wandering around in people's shop. The first thing I did when I got here
was wander around.
I just wander around. I was like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. And it's It's mesmerizing.
Yeah. So that's the podcast for us, is being able to, in an audio form, because the way Woodsmith has always been, and Shop Notes, is that we kind of, because we do a lot of the stuff in-house here, we end up having a routine of, we always do things in this way because that's just kind of the routine we've developed.
Mhm.
But in our own shops, Logan uses his table saw. I end up using my router table.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that we are all woodworkers. I mean, it's what we enjoy.
Yeah.
So, we're lucky because we get to work in the woodworking space at the magazine and on the show and stuff like that. But even if we didn't do that, we would be woodworkers at home. So it's fun to kind of share our personal, what we're doing at home or what we're doing in the shop here, kind of outside the realm of the TV show and the magazine.
Yeah. So what, did you ever, you on the first episode had said that you were in a shop funk.
Yeah, I was. And I think I was trying to figure out what it stemmed from. Because now I'm like on the opposite end of the spectrum. I got too much stuff going on, which is like, I wanted to meet halfway and I didn't. But, we moved our video studio. I was kind of getting ready to list our house for sale, stuff like that. Yeah. So I just a lot of stuff on the peripheral that was going on that kind of pulled me away from the shop. Yeah. So it's like, I need to get back. I know I got projects I want to do, but I don't have any motivation to get in and do them. I just kind of want to go relax right now. Yep. And now I have like 8 projects going on. I have too much stuff going on in the next 2 weeks. I can't get stuff done. So yeah, I think it's at least I get in those shop funks, where it's like, I just wrapped up a big project, take a breather, and that breather lasts a little longer than I was expecting. Yeah. So I think most people get into one.
Everybody gets in their shop funk.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good time to clean your shop.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you working on, Phil?
I got a couple of things going on, which sadly I usually do. I have a couple of tool chests that I use for when I teach classes that I end up kind of just piling a bunch of crap in and then taking to it. And then you end up rooting through it, like a laundry basket kind of a thing. So I wanted to organize those a little bit. So that's my here in the shop project. And then my daughter wants a side table or a nightstand for her bedroom. So I'm actually going to be looking at one from that Michael Cullen did for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little curvy.
No, it was a square one. He did to go with his with a bed that he did just recently.
See, this is really embarrassing that the Woodsmith guy is
yeah. It's not that it's not that we like track you guys.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah. Yeah, we don't spy on each other.
No, not at all. No. So anyway, I'm working on that, and then I have some bookcase project I'd like to work on.
Cool.
Yeah.
You carving at home?
I am. I'm working on a koi right now.
A koi?
A koi.
All right.
So it's sort of inspired by, I've seen some figureheads on ships of interpretations of dolphins that are very stylized and have very deep scale patterns, and so I'm trying to kind of bring a little bit of that in.
This is really interesting to me that at home you're artsy woodworker, and here you're building CNC machines out of wood.
But are the two much different?
I guess not.
It's like a yin and a yang. One cannot exist without the other.
It's great.
No, I mean I scream and say things about software and so forth when we're working with the CNC machine sometimes and dealing with that. And that's interesting and fun, and it draws you down in a certain way. But then the carving is the opposite. So why not?
What's your favorite carving wood? What's your favorite wood for carving?
I think I actually like white pine the best.
Okay.
Really?
Yes. I mean, people always say basswood. Well, basswood is kind of, I think it's because we're dealing with second, third, fourth, fifth growth basswood so often, and it is a little bit muddy and stringy to deal with.
Right.
It has a softness which is kind of like, I don't know, biscuit dough, it feels like it. But with the pine, when it's dried nicely, it's a very crisp cut, and it has a good feel to it.
Yeah, I spent a week with Al Breed at a carving class with him, and that's why I felt the same way with basswood. It felt like it felt like it mushed.
There we go.
Mushed a lot, and I wanted something a little bit more crisp and clean, kind of like a an air dried walnut that's fairly soft.
Wait, Alan didn't give you some of his mahogany stuff?
No. He showed
It was
some,
the budget class.
but yeah, it was the budget class.
Oh, awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah. Des Moines, awesome. So
It is. It's
a fun town.
It's a hipster little town. It's
It is.
cool. Yeah, you get in the East Village. It's fun. Yeah.
right
yeah.
on. Everybody should come out to Des Moines.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So your podcast,
Got the podcast.
and where can they check out season 13?
Well,
Is
we
it online?
yes, we have it on our website, woodsmithshop.com. And I think in the very near future, it's going to be available on Amazon.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So for all the Amazon folk, you can be able to see it there. And then we also do the DVDs too. But if you're not getting it on your public station, like I said, every station sets its own schedule. But every station is also pretty attuned to listener feedback.
I was going to say, isn't there a website where you can go and it tells you your local stations? And
Yeah,
the email address?
our TVL, and we actually that was kind of a story from early on, and when we were shooting the show, when we were still trying to build our carriage on all the public television stations because of all these independent decisions. So we had sent out an email blast like, hey, if your public station isn't carrying it, contact them and let them know. And we got a call like 3 days after this email blast went out from a rural state station. And they were like, man, you guys got to send like a retraction to that email because we're just getting buried with calls. Like, enough. We're going to show the show on the station. We're like for real? You really got that much? And then he was like, how many calls did you get? 6? We're like, okay. Yeah. So people, the stations will listen. So if you're part of a woodworking group or at least know a couple of other woodworkers in your area and your station's not carrying it, let them know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's get the word out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that about does it for the pod.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, man.
Great.
Well, hang on. I got to read the end.
Okay.
This is where the music starts. That's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening. Awesome. Well, I am here in the Woodsmith Shop studio.
Welcome.
Thank you. Phil,
Yep.
Logan, Chris.
What? Okay.
That's fine.
Now you're
Wow.
ready.
This is not like something you're editing together back
Never
here.
happens to me.
Yeah, never.
Never happens to me.